Jim, what did you get me for Christmas? Nothing. Are you for real? You didn't get me anything? Alright, okay, well we'll be having words then. Yeah, I've got to do this, but after this, we'll be having words. Yeah? Okay. Yeah. Merry Christmas, everybody.
Dashing through the snow in a one-horse open sleigh, o'er the fields we go, laughing.
Love Actually, a romantic Christmas movie from the lost era of 2003. This movie brings us the happy and sad tales of a number of varied, but loosely connected individuals, all wrapped up in a nice Christmas bow. Now, this movie has an insane cast. It has Colin Firth, it has Bill Nighy, Rick Grimes, Keira Knightley, Emma Thompson, Severus Snape, Bilbo Baggins. It's absolutely insane. And with its absolute banger of a cast, and to be honest, some pretty solid comedy, this movie's now seen as kind of a modern Christmas classic. But it hasn't aged very well, and there's quite a bit of stupid shit in it. So I'm going to mock it like I've just seen it wearing a face mask underneath its nose. Seriously, how fucking stupid do you have to be? Anyway, COVID woes aside, I'm really sorry, Tier 4ers. Merry Christmas to all of you. Let's watch Love Actually. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is Chris Marshall's character, Colin Frissle, who is a catering company worker who prides himself on customer service, always adding in a little unsolicited sexual comment with all of his sandwich deliveries.
Try my lovely nuts. Beautiful muffin for a beautiful lady. Morning, my future wife.
Yeah, 2003, a simpler time indeed. But yeah, you'd absolutely lose your job for this, and you'd be trending on Twitter within the hour. And I mean, fair enough, you can't be doing this, Colin. It's not alright. And I like to think that 2020 Colin has changed his ways. But this movie is just very much a product of its time. But anyway, obviously no women respond to Colin's unwanted advances. And Colin comes to the only possible logical conclusion.
I've just worked out why I can never find true love.
Why's that?
English girl. They're stuck up, you see.
That he's right, and English women are just stuck up. Ah, yes, Colin, because it must be the fault of the 33.75 million women in the UK that you can't get laid. It couldn't possibly be because you're basing your approach off Bill Cosby. His friend, Tony, who works on a sex scene with Bilbo Baggins, comes at Colin honestly, saying,
Colin, you're a lonely, ugly arsehole, and you must accept it.
Tony just full-blown calls his friend an incel and encourages him to take what I believe the incels call a black pill and just give up on his endeavours and aspirations entirely. But Colin, ever the optimistic sexual harasser, decides that going to America is the key to getting laid.
I'm going to America.
And his friend Tony offers a counter to that, saying that all of the babes in America are already with rich, successful, attractive guys, and that he can't possibly compete. And I feel this is what the incels refer to as chads. Tony and Colin, eh? Just a couple of incel friends trying to make their way through this crazy, crazy world. I had no idea that Love Actually had kickstarted inceldom as we know it. Colin decides to rent out his flat to pay for his tickets to America, and decides to take just one rucksack filled with condoms.
And to rent out my flat to pay for my ticket. You think this backpack is full of clothes? Like hell it is. It is chock-a-block full of condoms.
The absolute optimism of this lad. He is physically incapable of giving up, which actually would be a good attribute if he wasn't solely devoting it to trying to sleep with women. And against all odds, Colin immediately finds himself in a five-some sex scenario the moment he lands in America. And not somewhere cool in the US, like California or New York. He goes to Wisconsin and gets immediate sex. There you have it, incels. If you're really struggling, just go to America and you'll immediately get sucked off as the plane is landing. If you are already there, I unfortunately don't have anything for you. Sorry. Colin Frissle truly is the breaker of inceldom. All it took was a complete and total dismissal of any notion that he could be wrong, and just to power through every facet of rational thinking until he eventually just kind of proved himself right. But yeah, seriously, he needs to stop being so creepy. But it's just funny to me that every other vignette in this movie has some kind of romantic angle, whether it be happy or sad. But this one is just, this man wants to get laid, and he will not give up until he is. It's honestly kind of a weirdly inspiring story, and more so than the other ones. It is funny to me, though, that rather than just reassessing the way he approaches women, Colin decides to go to the extreme lengths of completely upturning his life, probably quitting his job, certainly illegally subletting his flat, to go to America to have sex. His unbridled confidence is unparalleled. And the movie just vindicates all of his decisions by having him get super laid. Incredible. Anyway, moving on from the incel twosome, we're going to talk about Liam Neeson's storyline in this movie. Liam Neeson plays Daniel, a man whose wife has just died and left him with her son, Daniel's stepson. Which is doubly sad because 6 years after this movie was released, Liam Neeson's actual real-life wife died tragically. But what's funny about his situation in Love Actually is that no one seems to care. At one point in the movie, he's crying because he doesn't know how to deal with his stepson, and obviously his wife has just died, so it's a terribly traumatic time. And his friend, Emma Thompson, is just like, mate, no one's going to want to shag you if you keep crying about your dead wife.
People hate sissies. No one's ever going to shag you if you cry all the time.
Like, dude, his wife just died. Just died. Let's give him some support. What the fuck? But apart from no one giving this man half as much attention as he actually deserves, and just completely forgetting about this man's mental health and ignoring him entirely, the real plot is about the stepson Sam, who is in love with a girl in his class named Joanna. Now, Joanna's American, and Sam finds out she's going back to America, presumably because her family heard that Colin Frissle was over there and they're going to miss out. And this storyline culminates in Sam having one last chance to tell Joanna that he loves her at the airport before she's about to board a plane. The problem is that Joanna has already gone through the boarding gate, and Sam and Daniel, of course, don't have any tickets. It's pretty tragic. What can they possibly do?
Do you want to make a run for it?
Hold on to that as well.
You think I should?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Liam Neeson just tells his stepson to fucking run through airport security in one last-ditch attempt to reach her. This is some of the most batshit crazy parenting I have ever fucking seen. He just told his stepson to sprint through airport security without any identification or boarding pass towards a plane that's boarding and headed to New York. And this is post 9/11, so I think we all know how this would end. I'm all for making grand gestures of love, but this is just irresponsible on Liam Neeson's part. You'd think he'd be more protective of the people he loves after losing his wife. They kick off when you take a little bottle of water through. They're not going to be happy when you smuggle an entire human child in. Somehow, Sam survives and the security guards bring him back. But they don't even have a word with Liam Neeson. They're not like, right mate, we know your intentions were good, but that was just straight up fucking dangerous. We had the airport on lockdown, we thought it was a terror incident, the armed police are here, we could have fucking killed your son, you're the adult, you need to be a little bit more fucking responsible, don't you think? No, they don't do that, they just leave Sam and just wander off. It's bizarre. You gotta wonder, Daniel does this because Sam is in love with this girl. But how much can Daniel love Sam to put him in that level of danger? Anyway, enough bad parenting. Let's move on to Rick Grimes, Mr. Andrew Lincoln. Our boy Andrew has a terrible time in this movie. He's in love with a woman played by Keira Knightley, who marries his best friend. It's truly a tragic time for Andrew Lincoln. Although he could stop being so mopey and take a leaf out of Colin Frissle's book. You know, just go to America and get insta-laid if he wanted. Anyway, Keira Knightley marries Andrew Lincoln's bestie, and Lincoln records a private video of the wedding. And somehow the professional wedding video gets corrupted. It comes out all blue. A bit like Andrew Lincoln himself. But Keira Knightley asks Andrew Lincoln, can we use your private wedding video that you filmed? Because the other one is a bit fucked.
It's a complete disaster. It's come out all blue and wibbly.
And Andrew Lincoln's all iffy. He's like, I don't know where it is. And it's just right there on the shelf, and Keira Knightley finds it because, you know, he didn't really think that one through, did he? Fucking idiot. He's all iffy and withholding because he's in love with her, and the wedding video he recorded is just close-up shots of Keira Knightley's face. And I know you love her, my dude, but that shit's just creepy. Like, what is the purpose of that video? What are you going to use that for? When were you going to watch that? Alone? Crying into a tub of Ben & Jerry's? That's not a healthy coping mechanism. And as we know from Liam Neeson's storyline, if you're a man and you cry, then no one is ever going to want to shag you. But no, seriously, I can't think of one healthy reason to keep a video of your unattainable, unrequited love on her wedding day to your best mate. One way or another, that ends like a Shakespearean tragedy. But anyway, Keira Knightley is loving it.
Oh, bingo.
She just keeps talking about how gorgeous it is as she just watches close-ups of her own face. It's really bizarre. Like, none of the rest of the wedding is captured. There's some beautiful gestures of, like, an entire band that nobody knew about but Andrew Lincoln just appearing and playing a song. None of that is captured. It's just her face. And she loves it. Fair enough. Whatever. Oh, bingo. That's lovely. For a while, Lincoln is a little bit awkward and tries to keep his distance from Keira Knightley. And understandably, he would be a little bit upset about this whole event. But eventually he plucks up the courage to go and declare his love for Keira Knightley, without any begging for her to leave her husband. But he does this by standing outside of her house with huge cards with messages on them, and a radio to pretend it's carol singers. He declares his love silently through the cards, and uses the radio to pretend that it's carol singers, as to not alert his best friend, because he doesn't want him to know anything about this. He wants to keep it between Keira and him. But one thing is, how the hell could he have known that Keira Knightley was going to answer the door instead of his best friend? There's no fucking chance that he could have guaranteed that was the case, or that he wouldn't have just come to the door when he heard it was carol singers. Unless he somehow knew that he had a really big distaste for carol singers. What was his contingency plan for if his mate answered? Oh, hi buddy, could you send your wife down, please? Oh, what? No, the cards? Oh, and the music? Oh, no, that's for a different thing. I'm just on my way to something. Could you just fuck off and send your wife down, please? Can you just go, please? I just want to speak to her. Like, what? I like to imagine he would have just done it anyway, like a full-on Chad. Just, it doesn't even matter if he's standing there watching, he would have just done it. At the end of it all, though, Andrew Lincoln is left all alone. His best friend with the woman he loves, and a broken heart to repair. A bit like that other thing he was in, but with less zombies. Moving on now to Alan Rickman's character, a sexually inappropriate office boss, who I like to call Sexorous Snape, and Sarah. His name is Harry, but Sexorous captures him just so much better. He's Emma Thompson's husband, so we know he's never shed a single tear, and he's Sarah's boss. We meet him just after Colin Frissle wanders through his office delivering lunch and unwanted sexual advances, and Sexy Snope decides that it falls to him to have totally inappropriate conversations with his employees about their romantic and sexual interests. You know, because in 2003 it wasn't just a boss's job to oversee work-related matters, but also which of their employees are sleeping with each other. Sexress calls for Sarah, a seemingly shy employee played by Laura Linney, with a romantic interest in Carl. Carl. Sorry to all the Carls out there, but this man does not look like a Carl. But to be honest, with a bod like that, who cares what his name is? Anyway, Sexress calls Sarah into his office, specifically to have a really inappropriate conversation about how he and everyone else in the office knows that Sarah is into Carl, and then tells her to tell him that she wants to marry him and have lots of sex and babies with him.
Casually drop into the conversation the fact that you'd like to marry him and have lots of sex and babies.
You know that?
What the fuck? He asks her how long she's been in love with Carl, and rather than telling him to fuck off and mind his own business, she says, basically the entire time, that she's been there. He not only brings this up to an employee for seemingly no reason at this moment in time, but he also tells her explicitly to act on those feelings. This is so far beyond the remit of your boss. This is beyond inappropriate. What the fuck? And the thing is, it's clearly making her uncomfortable. This is absolutely going to an employment tribunal. There's no way that this is getting swept under the rug. Imagine if this happened in 2020 and your boss called you in and he was like, I and everyone else in the office knows who you want to fuck, so just do it already. Jesus Christ, that is not okay. Also, she has personal reasons for not making a move romantically. She has a brother who's mentally ill and takes a lot of looking after. So she just feels like she doesn't have time or can't commit to a relationship at the moment. And of course, this very commitment to her brother is what leads to this whole storyline going to shit when it comes between her and Carl getting together. Although really it's down to Carl just being a total fucking dickhead. Fuck Carl. I don't care how hot you are, Carl. Fuck you, man. Fuck you. Be a bit more understanding. You know what, Carl? This is why you're named Carl. Fucking dickhead. But this is exactly the reason why your boss should stay the fuck out of your romantic life. They don't know what's going on behind the scenes. Fuck you, Sexress. Sexress Snape. But it turns out that Sexress Snape is getting propositioned by his secretary, despite his wife. She's constantly being really overtly sexual, literally spreading her legs and talking about dark corners where they could do dark deeds.
Full of dark corners for doing dark deeds.
So either she's talking about birthing the Antichrist, or she's talking about sleeping with her married boss. And either way, that's just not appropriate. She even turns up to the Christmas party, Christmas, not Halloween, wearing devil horns. There's definitely some weird satanic shit going on here. I can only assume that this is some kind of weird sex office where everyone just gets involved in each other's sex lives. Colin Frissle is just wandering around with his harassment sandwiches and no one gives a fuck or bats an eye. The boss is actively getting involved in people's sex lives and no one cares or does anything. And the secretary is so overtly sexual that it's genuinely difficult to believe that this isn't just Brazzers HQ. And speaking of HQs, let's take a gander over at the HQ of the country, 10 Downing Street, and the Prime Minister, Hugh Grant. What a fucking segue that was. Yeah! Hugh Grant. Now largely considered a national treasure. And in this film, he plays the fictional counterpart to Tony Blair, former UK Prime Minister and now largely considered war criminal. In Hugh Grant's storyline, the Prime Minister is faced with Natalie, an employee of his, played by Martine McCutcheon, who he inconveniently falls in love with, and who the movie keeps making this joke about being fat.
He said I was getting fat.
I beg your pardon?
He said no one's going to fancy a girl with thighs the size of big tree trunks.
The chubby girl?
Would we call her chubby?
I think there's a pretty sizable ass there, yes, sir. Huge thighs.
Well, perhaps you should come on later, Plumpy.
But let's get one thing straight. Martine McCutcheon is not fat. This is peak 2003 Friends era comedy, where anyone a little bit larger than Skinny is considered fucking obese. She is just categorically not fat. And with that out of the way, sorry, had to mention that, because what the fuck? One of the main bits of this storyline is that the US president arrives without his wife, because she would have been lonely due to Hugh Grant's lack of a spouse. Because, as we all know, women can only possibly socialise with other women, or Colin Frissle, obviously. Because of this, he takes the opportunity to try and get jiggy with some women over here in the UK. And we see this when he makes unsolicited sexual advances towards Martine McCutcheon, which of course is totally unprecedented behaviour from a US president. Hugh Grant walks in on them and doesn't really know how to react. It's unclear whether he reckons that Natalie was reciprocating these advances, or whether he recognises that Natalie is not into this and the president is crossing a line. Natalie looks quite uncomfortable, but does he pick up on that? Not sure. And this ambiguity is enforced because Martine McCutcheon later explains to Hugh Grant that nothing actually happened between her and the US president, as if that's what Hugh Grant was worried about the whole time.
Look, I'm so sorry about that day. I mean, I came into the room and he synced towards me and there was a fire and he's the President of the United States and nothing happened, I promise.
And Hugh Grant never says anything along the lines of, oh yeah, no, I know, he's just a total fucking creep. And I knew you weren't interested and I could see that you were uncomfortable, so I knew there was never anything on your part. In fact, he never, not one time, mentions this sexual harassment to anyone. And from that I can only assume that his problem with the situation is that he just feels threatened by the US president when it comes to his relationship with Natalie. But rather than talking to either of the two people involved in the situation, including checking on Natalie to make sure that she's okay, or calling out the president on his totally fucked behaviour, this just prompts Tony Blair to completely destroy the special relationship between the US and the UK, after earlier saying that he wouldn't because the US is the most powerful nation on earth. Don't get me wrong, I agree, we shouldn't be sharing the international political stage with sex offenders, but this isn't the reason that Hugh Grant is doing this. He makes a very rousing and patriotic speech, yeah, but it's clearly not motivated by the president being a creep, because he never mentions it. To reiterate, he never once in this entire movie mentions the president's sexual misconduct to anyone, not even Natalie. So why is he doing this? What is his motivation? Why did he change his mind and now he's happy to piss on the US? Well, it seems like he just wants to keep Natalie open for himself, doesn't it? He's doing it for the poontang. He's making this unprecedented, shocking political move for a girlfriend. It feels like he's trying to vanquish a love rival, but in reality, he's just pissing all over the President of the United States, arguably the most powerful person in the world, and throwing away 70 years of international collaboration, just because he's worried someone might steal his girlfriend, who's not even his girlfriend. Man, I know politicians have vested interests, but this guy rivals Henry VIII on the lengths he'll go to get a GF. It just seems like a really fucked reason to destroy a relationship that's presumably quite beneficial for both countries. He's just thinking with his cock. He really hasn't thought this through. And if you're gonna do this, it should at least have something to do with the fact that the president is all sex assaulty and is a bit of a creep. But he never once mentions that. Anyway, to get off the cheery and Christmassy topic of sexual assault, which this movie is oddly filled with, after this day of pissing off Americans and defeating his love rivals, Hugh Grant is just chilling out in his bedroom, and in this famous scene, he flicks on the radio and hears a song dedicated to him. A golden oldie for a golden oldie. And I don't want to ruin this scene for everyone, but how long does it take before we realise that Hugh Grant has left the room with the radio in and has gone downstairs? He absolutely cannot hear that music anymore, which means he's just dancing to silence. He's just dancing to the creaking rhythm of the floorboard shifting in 10 Downing Street. It's very odd. But Adam, what if they have Sonos or something and the music's playing all around the house? Well, no, I can guarantee that 10 Downing Street does not have Sonos. It's just simply a bad investment. And that's because most of the people who actually end up there still prefer to listen to lute-playing servants and the distant sounds of the lower classes being executed. Plus, when he stops dancing, you can hear there's no music in the background, so, you know, he's just dancing to silence, which is really odd when you think about it. But nah, Love Actually is pretty good. It's definitely a product of its time, and it has some of that 2003 era pre-Me Too movement moments, but it's still quite fun, I guess. I think I still recommend it if you can look past all of the iffy stuff that doesn't really work in 2020. I mean, it's still a fun Christmas romp if you can get past all of that. But yeah, give it a watch this Christmas, and maybe when COVID's over, get a little trip to America so you can get yourself a good shag. Anyway, that is going to do it for today. Give me a cheeky Christmas like, a cheeky Christmas subscribe, and a cheeky Christmas comment. Let me know which of the storylines from Love Actually is your favourite, and whether you think Colin Frissle needs to be locked up. I think he does. He is a madman, and he has no concept of giving up. Thanks to Jim for the will to continue living. And Merry Christmas to everyone. Enjoy your Christmas. Enjoy your New Year. It's kind of shit right now, but love your families, love your friends. Have a good one. Later, nerds.